And we're live. What's up, gentlemen? Welcome to episode 2 of Everything in Moderation podcast.
Hello, my friends.
What's up, boys?
All right,
How's it been going, boys?
Eric, what are we talking about today?
Today we're on the topic of police brutality.
Who wants to get us
Good
started?
topic with today's world.
Very divisive topic.
Who wants to get us started?
I know Luke does. I see it in his eyes.
Oh, let's hear it, Luke.
Dude, I mean, oh, John, wait, what the fuck happened to your head, Sean? My man's got a bandage crossing half of his eyebrow.
Yeah, the Ocean kind of beat me this weekend.
Oh my god.
Ocean won. I lost.
Jesus. All right, get him next time, boys.
Exactly. We'll get him next time.
Nah, but I think it's safe to say that in the current situation, there's definitely needs to be some type of change. How we go about that change, I think, may be up for kind of a debate. I think that's what we will be discussing, our personal ideas on the best way to fix what's been going on.
What do you think is broken?
One of the big things is the accountability for police. That is just actually terrible. I mean, I respect the loyalty that police have for each other, but a lot of like these police departments, they cover up, misdoings by their fellow officers and fellow like brothers in blue or whatever you want to call them. And I think that they need to be held more accountable for such a high figure in our society.
I think that obviously it is a extremely tough job, both like mostly mentally. Obviously, you risk your life every time like you even pull someone over. But the thing is that they're not allowed to be regular people. They have to be exceptional. Like
They're held to a higher standard than regular citizens are. You
making,
knew that when you accepted the job.
Yeah, they're making mistakes that like we would make.
Exactly.
They're supposed to be the professionals.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Someone told me actually, they're like, oh, do you think that all like police stations and police departments just haven't had the opportunity to fuck up yet, or is it just there's just certain ones that are more corrupt than the others?
I'm not even sure I'd say it's quote unquote corruption that it's happening. I think it's just they don't have enough training. They need to have more training before they're even put on the streets. Because, like, for us, I think they have to, what do they have to complete, a couple weeks of training?
Yeah,
I think
And, like, in other countries, they have to go to actual school.
I think training's a couple months. I think it's like a month or two. You have to live at like the police academies. At least for state police, I believe you have to like live at the police academy or something for like a month or maybe 6 weeks or something like that. But like, I don't think that's enough time to instill the type of discipline that like these like think about the Army, right? Like I wouldn't say very similar disciplines, but to an extent they have very similar roles and or job characteristics, I should say. And they go under so much more intense training than the people that we have patrolling our streets.
So what do you guys think about this? So the police academy is 25 weeks of intensive training in New York and New Jersey. But basic training is, I believe, 6 weeks.
I think it's 6.
So why is it that our military comes out with a much higher quality of de-escalation training and just being cool under pressure than a 25-week program?
I don't think the police are really trained to de-escalate. They're just like that. Most of those weeks are like physical training or like training to like learn the law, which is kind of like you have to know that, but like that's kind of like a stupid thing to teach someone who's going to be like out in the streets.
Yeah,
I think they need to add on another section of their training. Like he's right. It is a ton of just getting them in physical shape and getting reflexes down. If someone pulls a gun on you, like they spend hours on a gun range, which obviously is somewhat important to their jobs. They have to carry weapons, but they also need to be trained in how to de-escalate and hold their nerve and not make the mistakes, like you said, Christian, that we would make.
I think to an extent, though, that they do get trained in de-escalation, but it's either A, not sufficient, or because there's no way that they get absolutely zero training in de-escalation. There's just actually no way that's possible. And like if you ask multiple police officers, they admit that they've been trained in de-escalation tactics. Now, to the extent that they were trained, that's something that I don't know. But I think under a lot of these, like especially if you don't practice something a lot, like how many times you think these officers have to go through like de-escalation simulations?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe
I
like
mean, like once a year. Well,
Yeah.
let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's say it's once a year,
I don't even think they do that.
right?
Yeah.
Let's just theorize that they do, right?
Jump training once they do it, unless they screw up.
That's still not enough practice for something to become like second nature, right? Like if you think about something like that, you don't like you want like that's obviously something you don't want to just like revert back to like your natural instincts of like defensiveness, right? Like in those situations, that's something where you want to make like the de-escalation your second nature. So like you need a lot of practice in doing that, and I don't think that they're very well equipped for handling stuff like that. And that's why I think like a lot of people were saying that, I mean, obviously people are like, don't call the military on your own people, but to an extent, I think that if we called National Guard in for riots, they would have done a much better job at handling the situation than you see like all these videos of police still becoming aggressive at these protesters. Because like these they're trained so much more extensively than our police department. And there's even videos of protesters yelling at the National Guard, and they just stand there and take it. You do that to a police officer, you don't know what you're going to get. One police officer may take it fine. The next one may beat you with his baton.
There's also videos of the National Guard using tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse protesters. That is not.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
if they get
but-
orders to, that's different.
But there's a difference there because the National Guard is responding to orders, whereas where police officers respond on individuality.
Yeah.
Right. So like all these police brutalities are because like the individual cops are, like they're just going forceful, right? But National Guard deploying tear gas, that's something that's higher than an individual command.
That's a whole nother issue. I don't need to get.
Yeah, that's like a whole entirely other thing.
You guys think that there's an ego problem with police officers?
100%.
A little bit. Definitely.
A lot of.
I think that you could look at the Jacob Blake case where the officer repeatedly tells him to stop, and then it's like in his head he's probably like, "Oh, you're not listening to me. I'm gonna shoot you now." You know, because it's just like you're not respecting him, and like the thing is the cop. I mean, in today's society, is sort of the law, but it shouldn't be like that.
I think it's important to remember that police officers shouldn't kill anyone. It doesn't matter what they did before. The job of the police officer is to arrest someone and put them in front of a jury. And they shouldn't be killing anyone unless they like literally have their life legitimately threatened. I know someone's gonna make the argument that Jacob Blake was threatening the police officer's life. I don't see it either way. It shouldn't have even got to the point where he was going to the front door of his car. That's on the cop, and you can't. Like you shouldn't be killed for not listening to a police officer, especially when we get into the talk about how all these police officers have been, or not all, but some police officers have like an ego problem where they think they're like, you have to listen to me or I'm just going to kill you. You know what I mean?
I agree with everything you said. I would just put the caveat that besides the cop himself being in danger, if there's innocent people that are in danger and have their lives threatened, in that case, it's okay to use deadly force too.
I think it's an extent to say that their ego drives them to kill people. I think that's like kind of a stretch. Like to say like an ego asserts
driving force, but
I'd say like I say their ego like if you have an officer that's ego like has a large ego, it has an ego issue, then like they may be more likely to use excessive force. But I mean, I think there's also an extent like to what we were saying, how they're not really properly trained or receive enough training in certain type of situations. But to say that, like, yeah, you don't listen to me, I'm gonna shoot you. Like, I don't think that's exactly how it went
I
down in the
I
guy's
don't think
head.
so either.
You know,
I think that maybe. Do you think that police training gives them a confidence in their own abilities that like really it shouldn't even like because police training isn't as comprehensive as it should be. Like it just gives them like a false confidence in a way that makes them
Mhm.
think that they're handling it in the right way.
yeah, but they're not.
Yeah.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
I
Like
think it's
with
also the fact that they emphasize like training like with guns and shit. So like they have like this get out of jail free card, so to speak, in their back pocket, where if someone doesn't listen, like they know that like they'll probably get away with something. Like if they shot someone, they'd probably get away with it.
Like the police unions will back them
you
up
know what?
and
To go off of that, I'll do it in a second. I've been told, shouldn't say it that much, but I have an idea
Go for it.
about the
so,
police.
You can't just blue balls like that.
So, with the police unions, I'm not saying disband them or anything, and I think they're important to make sure that the good cops are treated fairly and everything. I do have one bone to pick with them, and that would be the contracts that police unions employ. I didn't realize it until I did a little research and talked to a couple of people, but in police unions specifically, I don't know how many other unions do it, but I know the police unions do. When you, like, say you get a contract for 4 years, when your contract is up in 4 years, like, to me, that means if you haven't signed a new contract, you don't work here anymore. But in a police union, if you have a 4-year contract and you work 4 years and you don't have a new contract, you just keep working under the terms of the old contract until a new one gets signed. And I think that that needs to be changed because it's a little bit of an abuse of power and it prevents departments from being able to weed out the cops that they don't want to keep on or like the bad cops because it's harder to fire cops than a lot of other professions. And I think if they were to change that so that when their contract runs out, they don't work there anymore, like maybe you can do like a temporary contract for a couple months while you work on one. But if you don't have it after like a month or two on that temporary contract, that's it. Like you're done. You don't work here anymore. I think that should be changed.
Eric, I have a quick question for you.
So
This may put you in a little. This is a little mousetrap for you. I'm trying to see if you're gonna bite.
yeah, probably.
Are you for or against police unions?
I'd say I'm for. I think they're a little too strong now.
Okay, because I was gonna bash you and say last week you literally said you're for unions.
Every profession should unionize, to be honest.
Yeah. If you said no, I was gonna be like, last week you said you were for unions. Now you're not. I was ready to call you a hypocrite, but I can't now. You fucked me.
So, what are the steps if you were leading this country that you would take to help fix this issue? John?
I would say that the biggest thing that I would say needs to happen is quote unquote defund the police departments. However, I don't mean just defund them so they have no money. I would say defund the city police departments that are accountable to no one but the police commissioner who gets appointed and the chiefs who are appointed.
By the mayor.
Yes. And make them into county sheriff departments where the sheriffs are elected and by the people and are directly responsible for the people. And so they have to uphold what the people want. And
TikTok too, and completely agree.
like a city police department, not that they can do whatever they want, but they can kind of do whatever they want. Whereas the sheriff's department is accountable to the people because they're elected by the people.
I agree 100% with that. If I were to change one thing, I'm not sure exactly what like the law is. I forget what it's called, but it's basically like if a cop does something wrong, but there's no legal precedent where someone's been tried for that, like they can just say like, oh, there's no precedent. Like I can't, like, let's say someone like kills someone with a piece of tape or something. I don't know. It's on my desk. If a cop kills someone with a piece of tape and no one's ever been tried for killing someone with a piece of tape before, they get off completely fine because there's no like legal precedent for enforcing that. I think that is absurd.
Kind of wild. How did that get passed?
See, like, I'm kind of torn with the whole defunding police thing because, like, on one hand, I think there's certain situations that don't require police, right? But at the same time, I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like obviously like, disrupting the current structure instead of trying to reform it first. I don't know how well that sits with
Yeah,
me.
but no, like when people say defund the police, they don't mean to give it $0.
No, I know what they mean, and it's like, you incorporate more like suited figures for certain types of situations, and like they're still accompanied by police officers and etc. for defense and stuff like that, but you're just limiting the scope of the police officer, so to speak.
Like think about it like this: if you have like a domestic abuse case, who do you want to call a police officer there? Probably
Well,
not.
yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
not. I mean,
Like,
you want someone who's like trained in mental health. And,
like a counselor, or something, right? Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like common
I feel
sense.
like you need a cop there, but the counselor should be the lead.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
But the cop should still be there because sometimes these domestic violence things is like a
But dude, here's the thing.
who's huge.
Let's say you're the person that's like in a domestic, like, let's just say like you're the person that you're getting the police called on, and a counselor shows up to your door. You're gonna talk to a counselor? Come on, dude.
Yeah, but
Like,
it's not going to be like, tell me about your problems. It's going to
I know. I agree, but I think
de-escalation.
what happened?
It would be someone who's trained in de-escalation.
Yeah, I get that, but dude, I don't know. These are such sticky situations because I don't think a counselor is gonna do much.
What do you think a cop?
You need to have the cop there as a
Dude,
backup.
I think a cop's just gonna like stroll in there and put some cuffs on the dude and take him out.
You
Or
think
the
that,
girl.
You think that's a valid
Listen,
domestic abuse problem?
girls
I mean, if there's
can,
domestic abuse,
girls can abuse guys. That's a fact.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
but that is like a 1 in 5
I know.
statistic thing.
I know. I just had to add in if he's abusing or she. You know, the officer can cuff either one depending on who the perpetrator is.
Yeah, but don't you think that's kind of like if an officer walks in there, he's like, "You're getting cuffed. You're getting cuffed. You're getting cuffed." Like that, they're not going to want to talk to the police. It's
Sounds
like
Oprah Winfrey of the cops.
I know.
Everyone loves Oprah Winfrey.
That's not going to solve anything. No one wants to like talk to a guy who's gonna like if you say something wrong to a cop, what are they going to do? They're going to arrest you.
They're gonna shoot you.
I mean, I don't know about shoot. This is getting
I'm kidding.
over the edge here, but like at the same time, all right. So here's the thing, right? What if you're the victim of domestic abuse, and a counselor shows up to your doorstep trying to de-escalate the situation? How would you feel safe with? Would you feel safer with a counselor showing up or a police officer or both?
This with both of them showing up.
With both?
Yes. Christian, what about you? We haven't heard you talk in a couple minutes. Weigh in.
I mean, I feel like the both would work. Ideally, you'd want to have the cop be able to do the counselor's job, I think, because then it's just less people you have to pay.
That's what I was thinking, right? Yeah.
That brings me to the thing, like, you know, in the wars in the Middle East that we've been involved in, a lot of soldiers are trained to go to areas that they're occupying, cities and whatnot, and talk to the people, and it's called like boots on the ground method or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And basically they just like speak to them. They're like, okay, like could you like explain to us where the insurgents might be, what do you need, what's the issue here, you know, like what do you guys when do you see them roll around the most? I feel like that would be more productive, but again, the question I'm asking is why is the military able to do that in probably even more of a worse situation than police doing it here?
Because the police are trained as soon as they see a weapon that they can pull theirs, and in the military it is drilled into you that you cannot fire until you are fired upon.
I don't
And if
I
you
don't
fire before that, you will be court-martialed and sent to jail.
I don't know if Christian's like really hitting home on that point though. I think he's trying to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but I think you're talking more about like an interpersonal relationship with like the civilians that they're there to serve, right? Because like even when they go to Middle Eastern countries, they're not only protecting their own people, they're also protecting, like the civilians there, because these terrorists, they bomb anything, they bomb their own people sometimes. So we're also protecting them. So having that interpersonal relationship builds like that kind of trust that we were talking about is completely lacking,
Exactly.
right? Especially with like a situation like this. And going off your point, Christian, I completely agree. I think that like having some type of like a program where the cops become like, I feel like in the current situation, right, the police department is very disconnected from the people that they serve, right? Like if you go to like tell me to name a police officer in my town, I can't name you one, right? I can't name you the chief, I can't name you anybody, right? So like I feel like if there's more of a personal connection with these officers, there's going to be like more trust and a better system like that way.
I
um
I agree with that. I think that that's important so that you know the officers and can trust the officers.
yeah.
But also, I believe that they should have a program. Well, actually, this is a program that is used sometimes, but not widely. I was listening to a police psychologist. She solely studies police psychology, and I think they ran a test where they brought in an actor who was pretending to be like like it was the reason for someone calling the cops,
Hmm.
and it was like 90% of the time the cop got physical with the actor. So I think that they need to do like, and then as soon as like that cop made that mistake, if it wasn't warranted, they had to they stopped it immediately and then started it again. So
Yeah, I just want to say I think it's important to note that police brutality isn't only like police shootings or killings. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
like excessive force too is an important component.
Mhm.
That's yeah, I agree. And going off that, Eric, I was about to say that I was about to like kind of hit home on that point is that there's other forms of brutality. And like this may not be a very, a popular oh wait, what just happened? My screen just went away. This may not be like a very popular like scenario for police brutality, but like think about like any situation that could spur it, right? So like even just a traffic stop, right? That could turn very quickly into something like physical, right? A physical alteration. And I think one of the things that these police departments say they don't have but do are quotas, right? So they're pulling over, like just random people for like very minor like infractions. I think that's a word, but like whatever it is, like going 5 miles over the speed limit, but then they find weed or they find something else, and then it just turns into a big whole debacle, right? So you take away those and you only go after the bad perpetrators instead of just like trying to fill your monthly quota. I think that may also be a good reform to have moving forward. And
Yeah.
they say they don't have them, but they do.
You know what they
So,
say? Fines are just laws that only poor people have to follow.
so how do you like get rid of the quotas? How if they don't exist? How are you supposed to outlaw them?
Well, I mean, like I'm pretty sure that's how they judge like officers like performance. Like that's like one of the ways they judge them.
What policy are you gonna like? Are you suggesting that to be put in place that outlaws this? Like, how do you outlaw this? I
Uh,
think it should go, but like, how?
yeah. I mean, I don't really have all the answers. I'm sure there's like some strategists that can come up with a better solution than I can. But I think I mean, I'm just trying to like point out their flaws that I
I
see.
mean, did you know that I learned that when I was taking a law class a couple of years ago that I mean this is not relative to the police, but I'm going to make a connection here. That I believe court justices need to have a certain amount of guilty cases a month, or um, they risk percentage loss of their um,
Hey, Their salary?
what's the word? Benefits or something.
Oh, okay.
So when I read that, I was like, what the heck? Like, how is that possible? Because now, like, they're gonna be nitpicking, which is exactly what I think ticket quotas are. It's nitpicking. The
Yeah.
worst, and it's per month. So the worst time to drive at the end is
Is
at the
at
end
the
of
end of
the
the
month
month. Yeah.
because the cops are pulling over the most amount of people during that time. I mean, I don't know if that's like an actual fact, but you certainly see that later on. But
I think that like a lot of the like we're thinking of like band-aid solutions where like the problem is way more ingrained in like the country than that because like they need to fill up the prisons, right? So what's the most common thing people do? Most common thing people do is smoke weed. Most common thing people do is speed. Most common thing people do is drinking and driving. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna put all these. I don't know why I said drinking and driving. That was a really bad example.
Drinking and driving, that's a pretty bad one.
But I like if these prisons aren't filled up, they're not making money, and if you know what I mean, like I think the problem stems from like for-profit prisons more than like the police.
Dude, yeah.
Private.
Aren't like there's like private prisons in the United States?
Yeah,
Most
they
of
like sell in prison.
That's like absurd. To have a
Yeah.
private prison, like that's just absurd. Like, why is everything in this country monetized? Like prisons,
capitalism.
like, dude, that's absurd. But here's the other thing, right? So like I think there's also a discrepancy. Like, yeah, you say like all these people do this stuff to fill up the prisons, but there's also a discrepancy in I literally just saw something the other day where there's something called basis points, I guess, in the judiciary system, and that's I guess how they rank people based on their offenses. And it's like a white and a black guy had the same basis points for the same exact crime, same exact previous history. One guy got like 25 years. The black guy got 25 years. The white guy got 2 years. And it was like for like
Mandatory minimum.
cocaine or something like that.
I just want to point out that crack has a way higher mandatory minimum.
Yeah, than cocaine, and it's cheaper. So a lot of like low income people buy crack instead of cocaine.
Wait, but while you're in that topic, I have a study here that I wanted to say. It's like a study from like I think it's like over like 100,000 cases, and it says that black male offenders receive 19.1% longer federal sentences than similarly situated white male offenders, and it says male offenders with similar past offenses, socioeconomic background, etc. So literally the study goes on to say like the darker you are, like the higher your prison sentence is. So like a light-skinned black person is like in the middle between like white and like dark-skinned black person.
That's really
insane.
That's really interesting.
No,
that is really interesting.
Eric, could you just tell us the name of the study so if our listeners want to look it up themselves, they can see it?
It's called Demographic Differences in Sentencing and Update to the 2012 Booker Report by the United States Sentencing Commission.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild statistic.
Do you imagine putting out that report and then not doing anything about your sentencing laws?
Yeah, that's also a good point. That's like just absurd. So now I got a question for you guys. Going on this whole police brutality thing. How do you feel? Okay, so like this is like obviously I know, Eric is pro Biden or whatever for fixing these racial issues.
Not pro Biden.
No, for fixing these racial issues, I'm saying. Like for the racial divide and everything, right? It's for the social issues in the United States, you trust Biden more than Trump. That's how I should say it.
For candidates.
Sorry, what would you say, Sean?
I think you should specify Eric is pro Biden between these two candidates.
Yeah, that is very important.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. So how do you think that, one, Biden's past influences him, and two, his pick of Kamala Harris influences him? Because both of them have very interesting records when it comes to this like racial issue in the judiciary system, and B, upholding police brutality. Kamala Harris, as the DA in San Francisco, overlooked for years police brutality cases. People petitioned her for years, and she constantly took her hands out of it and said, I'm leaving it up to whoever else. And I don't know how that's going to really if it will affect anything, but I think that's pretty reflective on how she may take a stance on this. So what do you guys think? If you guys have any opinions?
I don't want to. Someone else can go.
And Biden, obviously, I'm sure everyone has seen it once, twice, or a million times about the 1994 crime bill, I think, that disproportionately jailed black minorities compared to other races.
So I actually want to kind of transition into the interviews I did. I did interviews with 3 Black Americans, which were very insightful. And this is one of the questions I actually asked them. I said, do you think that Joe Biden, if elected, would take measures to solve the issue of police brutality? One said, yes, I do, 100%. Another one said, I really hope so. I think that he would try. I don't know how effective he will be, but he will take strides to figure it out. And then the third said that he thinks he would be coerced into it. So
I would say that Biden is at least going to try. Like your friend said, I'm not sure how effective he'll be at it, but I think he'll at least try. I think Donald Trump has a lot of pride and doesn't really want to admit that he's wrong.
mm-hmm.
So he's just going to try and act like what he's doing is right.
Yeah. And you guys kind of hit the Biden thing. I'll hit the Kamala Harris thing. I like you said before, if you don't hit like your quota, then you get punished. And like that was her job. Her job was, she was a prosecutor. Her job was to prosecute people. What do you want her to do? Not prosecute things that she doesn't believe in. That's not really how it works. Like if you're a physical therapist, would you not treat someone because they're fat because you don't believe in that? Like you wouldn't have these problems if you weren't fat.
But okay, so but you're saying don't prosecute things that you don't believe in?
It's given to you.
You kind of have to take the cases. Yeah, you don't get to choose.
Okay. Well, no, she was the DA. But people petitioned her constantly to take on these cases of excessive police brutality and excessive force.
They're unwinnable.
Yeah, like you also have to weigh up
unwinnable cases.
Yeah, you have to weigh up what the chances are you can actually win the case.
I mean, yeah, but
you can't have a terrible conviction rate.
Yeah, 100%.
DA. Then you're gonna get kicked out as the DA because you're not effective.
What are you saying? Are you saying like Kamala Harris?
But then, hold on. So if you're saying that, then we have a vice president who doesn't stick up for her values and her true beliefs. If that's the case, if the case is that she's more worried about her conviction percentage rather than actually fighting a real issue of police brutality and excessive force, then I guess we're looking at someone who doesn't really back up their beliefs, even if it's the risk of losing their job.
If she was fired as the DA for not being competent, do you think she'd be the vice president right now? Do you think she would?
The DA is elected.
Can I just say
the DA is elected?
Not the vice president yet.
Okay, yeah, you're right. That's
vice presidential candidate.
The DA is elected, not you.
That doesn't matter. The point still stands. If she's not effective at her job, she will get replaced. Do you agree with that?
I mean, in both, she got reelected to another term and still didn't do anything. They reelected her after the first time.
Luke, if she gets fired from her job and just becomes a nobody, because I don't know what she would do if she got fired as the DA. Thankfully, enough to find out what happens. But she ate the poison bullet or whatever you would like to call it, and she's moving into a position where she can actually affect change in the Senate and possibly as the vice president.
I mean, yeah, but then you're completely going back on your integrity. Like you lose your entire personal integrity. All right, Christian, you go. Your hands up. He's doing the little finger wave, the
little jazz hands.
Little magic fingers.
So what Eric says is, when he says that would she lose her job for not being effective? I agree. She, like, if she did not do what she was expected to do, she would probably have lost her job. But now this stems into the thing where if cops give like tickets to people who really like don't deserve them, or judges pick guilty cases, even though that they just want to make sure that they cover their ass and make sure that they keep their job. Is it a problem with the person or the system?
Yeah, I think it's the system.
Luke, you seem to have some strong feelings on the subject. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Is it? I'm sorry. The question was, this whole thing was,
The person or the system?
is it the person or the system?
Like, I think the question is more: is it on the person to make a personal stand, or is it like, if you make a stand, you're just gonna get replaced because the system?
Yeah, because yeah, I know. It's kind of like the system forces the hand, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here.
So,
The system forces the hand, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know.
look,
I feel like the Democratic Party is going to try and push one thing into Biden on this police reform, but I don't know if Kamala Harris is going to be fully on board.
well, see, this is the thing. So, I mean, I don't know how if this is the case, but what if Kamala Harris did her job so that she could get to this position of power where she could actually make some kind of change?
That's what I was.
Yeah, I think that's what Sean was trying to say. But that's like playing a long ass game. Like, what if she never got here? Then you just have a bunch of people that suffered at the hands of the system. And that's kind of what we're talking about here the whole time, is people suffering at the hands of the system.
What was she going to do in her position as a DA to change the system besides not do the cases and get fired?
Exactly.
What was she going to do to change the system?
You're leaving a lot of, bodies behind in your wake, but it's like, listen, are you gonna criticize her for doing her job?
Yeah.
You could, I mean, listen, you would hope that she would stand up for what she believes in, but our system just doesn't allow you to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's what it really comes down to. I mean, to be honest, I really don't know how I feel about her just yet. I'd like to hear her speak more, but again, I'm not going to pass judgment on her, but in terms of, I mean, has she even mentioned the issue since she was the vice president nominee?
Is a good question.
I don't think
I'm
so.
not sure.
Because if,
Or at least she hasn't done like a speech on it. Maybe she gave a quote.
because
She's
I'm
done a
interested.
couple speeches.
I'm interested in seeing if
No, I'm specifically on
does
this.
I'm interested in seeing if she does a 180, like how we say, like, she did her job, and then she's like, all right, she's like, now that I'm here, now I'm going to change things, which,
Well,
okay,
Mhm.
that's fair.
Yeah.
But if she continues her, like, let's say that her beliefs are reflective upon her track record, and obviously her track record is not, ideal for the party that she is running for, but if she stuck with those beliefs, what do you think would happen?
That's where my current caution. Yeah, that's where my current caution is with her.
I mean, I'd say in that case, then I would say the Democrats are probably happy she's not the president and she's only the vice president.
Yeah, but the vice president has so much influence on the president. So much.
It depends on the president. The president always has right-hand man and
Vice
woman.
president's always the first one in the room and the last one to leave.
That's not always true. Sometimes it's the chief of staff or the secretary of state. It kind of depends on the president who their go-to guy or girl is when they're in office.
Let's not get hung up on this.
Did the president and the vice president go on dinner dates? I don't know, man. All right, so I don't know how much time we have left on this, but I do want to kind of delve into these interviews.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Go more into them.
So Um, so my first question to the three, um, what are your thoughts on what is going on? One person said, "I'm sad. Why?" And he asked, "Why aren't these police officers being held accountable? And what is going on in our justice system? Enough is enough." Another one said, "We reached a point when George Floyd was killed that Black people in this country decided enough was enough, and not even in this country because you saw protests all around the world. There was just a tipping point, and it just gets to be too much, and it needs to end now." They cited that protesting during the pandemic shows how serious this issue is to them. One immediately cited Black history and different stories that he learned when he was a child, and he always knew from his parents that they educated him and that there has been a systematic problem in American institutions. He asked himself how he could present a different image for the Black community moving forward to dispel stigmas. And he thinks the biggest feeling that he's had over the last few months has been disheartening in seeing people's reactions. Some people stepped up to the plate saying, "Hey, this is wrong," but others say they don't see a problem. Why, and or they rationalize why he had to be brutalized, why he had to be killed. So that aspect of it has been disheartening. We want to discuss that. I think what they said was pretty, like, I think most people feel like that.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that, like, especially in our country, how even today, like like these parents, these Black parents have to educate their children at like very young ages and how to react in situations where they're confronted with police. I think that's something that like really should not be an issue in our country. Um, and yeah, I agree with exactly how like he said he's feeling. I mean, especially like being someone like who may have gone through it or has the possibility of going through it like in the future. Definitely to have that on your mind could definitely impose that sort of
Mhm.
feeling.
I'm gonna
And
move.
even just watching those videos was just disgusting.
A lot of them said that one said that they had to watch the video in doses. So like they
Yeah,
watched
like
they watched like a minute like one day, they put it away for like 2 days, then they watched a little bit of the rest, like, and I asked them just like for my own personal curiosity, but I'm going to share here, is if there's a psychological thing to seeing another Black person being killed. And they said
Hmm.
yeah, because it's like almost they imagine themselves in that situation.
yeah, or like your brother or your sister or your father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um so my next question was, if you led the country, what would be your solution? So I'm just going to give you direct quotes. "If someone is unarmed, there has to be a way you can decrease a situation without ending someone's life. If you if you do, you should be put behind bars. Simple as that. I recognize the police's job is to serve and protect, but they're just not doing that." Another one said, "It's hard to lead the country, but the number one thing that a politician needs to do is to understand where people are coming from." They cited Breonna Taylor as an example and would want those in power to sit down with those affected by police brutality and show that they understand where they're coming from, validate their feelings, create changes, and work from there. Reform and sometimes destroy systems that oppress Black people. Um, and then the last one said, "I'm not a fan of defunding the police, abolishing the police. I'm all for police reform. There's a place for police in our community. Biggest thing is educating myself and educating others. We as a nation are a melting pot, and if we are to be the greatest country in the world that we claim to be, we need to educate each other and learn about each other."
Yeah.
I feel like education really is a huge component of anything.
Yeah, we don't learn too much in our in our current schooling system until you get to like university level.
I actually mentioned that because, um,
And
Black,
even then it's a choice too.
yeah,
You know, you
Black
don't have to.
Black history is, you're not really told the whole story. Um, and then if you want to understand more about a certain piece of Black history, you have to take a college class of your own accord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but this is how I remember it. But like when we were taught in like elementary school, high school, even. Like I was taught civil rights movement, all the protests, whatever. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, Martin Luther King was shot, killed, and then racism was solved. It was done.
Yeah, Rosa Parks.
Our fight is over. Like
Yeah,
that's not true at all.
yeah.
And I feel like if you don't like seek out that information that like racism really is like still a thing in this country, in every country, then like you won't find it. If you choose to not find it, you won't find it.
I think there's also though, like especially like when you're like in like sixth grade learning about that, I think there's also like a comprehension issue, right? Because like you don't know really what's going on in the world, and even like the people that may be affected, like maybe like you have like minorities that are infected by socioeconomic status, or maybe there's like other black people in there that will have to traverse this for the rest of their lives. They don't have any personal experience most likely yet, right? Their parents may do, and they may have heard stories, but they don't have any personal experience. So I think when you get older, I think I think that may be one justification for it, but I think at the same time, not mentioning it at all is also kind of like little, like they almost treat it like it's taboo, right? I feel like
And
they
it's
don't even like mention it.
also the fact that like you like see it, like everyone has their phone, they're always recording 24/7. It's like when something absurd happens, like chances are like you'll see it.
You're on, yeah, it's recorded. I think another thing though, maybe this is maybe you don't want to impression young kids with the idea of racism, right? You want to like keep their pureness almost, right? Their purity.
Erasing history
Sense.
doesn't get rid of the effects of it.
But I
Yeah,
think I think you got to start somewhere, right?
under the
So,
rug.
I mean, you just said education is like the biggest factor, and you're saying don't educate about this important.
well, I think there's also I think
I think
education is an important factor, but I think there's also something to be said about like kind of what we were talking about last week is like those smaller relationships on a smaller level, and how that can grow into a
Well,
larger effect.
look, I'm gonna explain this. Just I'll leave you with this thought, and I'm gonna move on.
Yep.
How come? How come young Black Americans have to learn about racism and we don't learn about it?
Yeah.
Why do they have to know how to act around the police when they get pulled over?
But we don't. Yeah.
All right. So moving on. I asked them, do you feel that this election is amongst the most important for Black Americans? The first one said that it's definitely important because you need someone in office who cares about the Black community. And to be honest, I don't think Trump necessarily does, per se. The second one said this is one of the most troubling elections of all time because there's such a distrust in politicians and in the president of the United States. They said that it doesn't matter who is nominated, there will always be distrust.
Yeah.
And then the last person said, for America in general, yes. For the world, even. He tries to be mindful on how he speaks on Donald Trump because at the end of the day, he is our president. This person said that they believe in the Bible, and the Bible teaches us to be mindful of how we speak on authority figures. And he is the authority figure, whether we like it or not. He said that he's a very divisive character and creates it, breeds it. Then he brings up that if you support Black Lives Matter, you are seen as a radical leftist or Antifa. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris represent progress here, and this is why he feels that this is one of the most important elections for us.
Personally, I agree with the number two, the second opinion, where it doesn't matter who gets elected, because the politicians are going to be politicians at the end of the day.
That's not how I interpreted that.
there's a lot of distrust among politicians, no matter who the politician is, because
Yeah,
I find that a lot of them don't tell the truth. I think we said it last week. Republicans will just tell you to your face that they're screwing you over, and Democrats will like do it behind your back. So
well, what do you guys? Well, just in regards to those statements, what do you guys agree with one in particular, like 1, 2, or 3? Like I agree with the second one. Do you
I
guys
like
agree
the
with
third
any of
one. I like yeah, maybe Trump isn't the best at this entire situation, but he is the president, so you can't like rail on him completely, especially with the election coming up.
Yeah.
But I do like that he thinks Biden and Kamala would be progressive, and I do think that they would be a lot more progressive in this area.
What about you, Christian?
I actually found it interesting how number three brings up religion on a many occasions during.
Yeah, I found that actually interesting that they incorporated that in there.
I mean, I'm going to talk about it later, like when it's relevant into one of the questions. But a lot of his beliefs come from religion. Number two, obviously, I totally understand where they're coming from. And number one, does Trump care about the black community? I mean, I don't know. I'm not in his head. Does what he shows? I'm sorry. Is what he shows a? Does it show that he cares? I don't know. It kind of paints different pictures depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm gonna move on. So I said, bias aside, how do you feel about Black Americans who are conservatives / Republicans? This is one question I wanted to ask because I think the majority of Black people in this country vote Democrat.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to correct me on that? Go
At
ahead.
least the ones that do go to the polls, right?
Yeah. So first one says, I think Black Americans who choose a conservative route doesn't exactly understand what the Black community have went through to earn the right to be a human being. They feel that Black conservatives did not have issues with the police. I don't know if you ever saw that Lil Wayne interview, but Lil Wayne on camera said that racism doesn't exist because it did not happen to him.
Well, very smart guy. Doesn't do any drugs that would ruin it.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he was probably high as a kite when he said that. Holy shit.
I mean, shit, yeah.
That's a wild statement.
So, number two, the person said, it confuses me. I can't really understand why. Well, the conservatives that support Trump support a man who is someone who's been accused of sexual assault, someone who's blatantly racist to Hispanics, to Black people, to Asian people, pretty much insults everyone and even women. I have no idea why a Black person would ever support Trump because he does not support us. And she quoted, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, as an example of that.
I mean, I don't think Trump supports anyone that's not
Wait,
rich. I don't think it really
Sean,
matters.
let him get through it. He's got one
Oh,
more,
I thought
man.
that was the end of it. My bad.
So
My bad.
number three immediately opened with the how Black people who lean right are seen as Uncle Toms. If you're not familiar with the term, is Uncle Tom is like being cuddly with their slave master. So he said, but with Blacks who see themselves like conservatives and Republicans, I got no problem with it. I even have certain ideas and beliefs that I share with the right, but others that lean to the left. I think it's wrong to call them these names, referring to Uncle Tom and the other one he used. If I believe one thing, I can't tell you that you're wrong. I desire to hear ideas and thoughts. If you disagree with me, I want you to talk to me about it. And then we can both walk away better for it. Genuine conversation is the only way truth can come about.
I think.
Yeah.
Podcast.
What were you gonna say, Eric?
Wait, Sean says something quick. What's up?
I said, is he talking about this podcast?
I think
Well,
Talk to each other and come away like actually having learned things.
I mean, to be fair, that all three did appreciate that I was willing to take the time and speak to them. I honestly kind of I did it the other way around, where I was more thankful for them because obviously it's a hard and heavy topic to talk about.
Yeah.
They're exhausted talking about it too. But I think that this enlightened me, and then I'm happy I could share all this with you guys and hopefully share it and other people could listen to this and come away with something. Just have a conversation, really. I think that just have a conversation with Black people that you know.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't even have to be friends, but literally, I'm sure so the third person actually brought up an interesting point. He said that there were two different people, and I apologize if I don't remember this correctly, but one, he said when things started popping off, he like a kid came to him and says, "Oh, what can I do to help? Like what's going on? You know, whatever." Whereas another one just like randomly like stated like one day, I'm just like they just like talked, like they didn't say like what can I do, like they just like had a conversation about like ideas and what's going on. Um, so he said, "Do I have to seek out people to teach, or should they seek me out?" That was his question. That he doesn't even know the answer. How do you guys feel?
I think people should want to learn about it so that they can have conversations with other people. You should want to educate yourself first and then move on to have conversations with other people.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't. I feel like at least today, like seeking people out. I don't know if that's because I feel like a lot of outspoken people on like these issues, like almost come across like people get like almost annoyed by it, like it's being shoved down their throat. You know what I mean? So I think that's why like taking the more passive route and having people that want to be educated come to you to talk about your opinions, like that's the route that I would choose if I was in that situation. I'd rather be sought out than rather try and change everybody's mind. You know what I mean?
I think that if you're going to teach someone, that person needs to want to learn.
Agreed. Yeah.
Whereas,
Because regardless if they don't want to learn, it doesn't matter what you say to them. This is just going to be a waste of your breath.
mhm.
Save your energy and use it on something that will, actually be beneficial to somebody. Even if it's just one person, it's better than saying it to 15 people that don't care.
I'm going to move on to the next question. The question I asked was, who will you be voting for this election and why? All three are planning to vote on Biden. One says that they're not a fan of Joe Biden personally, but they went back to what we said on the first podcast, that he's at least adaptable and
Yeah.
seems to want some kind of change. The other one mentioned how Trump is not held accountable for bigotry, which creates a culture. And then yeah, so that was pretty standard.
Just going back to the last question quickly. I agree with number 3, by the way, with the whole black conservatives seen as like the
Uncle Tom's.
Uncle Tom's. Yeah, I agree with that statement, and I agree that I think that's the beauty about this country, though, is that you can be whoever you want to be and support whatever ideology you want to, and to say that one particular race should vote for one way or should vote the other way, I don't know if that's really upholding the ideas that we're trying to keep.
Mm-hmm.
But back to this question.
Can I say something quick about that?
Oh yeah.
I think that a lot of people who like vote Republican care more about like economic issues, and a lot of people who vote Democrat care more about like social issues. I don't think like you can't say like just because you're black you have to care about social issues. And like this is just my experience of like people I've talked to. Like doesn't matter what their race is, what their gender is. Like if you care about like economic issues, you're probably gonna vote Republican.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kind of like that. That's kind of like the divisive one.
Description.
What did you say, Sean?
Sean, you broke up a little bit.
I said that is a very, very accurate representation from everything I've heard.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move on. I said bias aside, how do you feel about the Republican Party? And then I threw in there as a second question, and then the Democratic Party too. So they're answering for both here. First one says, no one should hate the right, the left, are independent. We are all trying to better this country. But the Republican Party is more related to business and making rich people more rich, not concerned about people like me in the middle class. and they are not really concerned with BLM, welfare, and healthcare. That's my issue with the Republican Party. The Democrats, I feel, are more involved with social issues, which is what Eric said, not money. Trying to create and better all people. I push more towards the liberal Democratic side. Second one said, I don't have a big problem with Republicans. I'm not going to sit here and say Republicans suck. I'm really not. Those are your political opinions, and the only issue I have is when people start to believe that human rights and the lifestyle of people in this country is all politics, because sometimes it isn't. Like, I don't find BLM to be political. As long as your policies aren't destructive to people, it's fine. Being Republican is not a problem unless you say hateful things or do hateful acts. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party is very divided right now, but I sometimes wish it wasn't just a two-party system. I wish there were other options. I mean, we see that we're kind of forced into voting one way or the other. Independent,
Yep.
is, an independent's not going to win in this current political landscape in the way that
Not-
the country's
You
set
can
up.
write in. They won't win.
But
You can
that's
write
that's
But then you're gonna have every person on Instagram saying that a vote against Biden is a vote for Trump. If you vote independent, it's a vote for Trump. If you vote for Trump, it's a vote for Trump. That one's obvious. that one's obvious. But if you don't vote, it's a vote for Trump. Like, you guys have to draw a line here. There's something called political liberty here. I don't have to vote if I don't want to.
Luke,
I could-
I honestly will say I hate the fact that you say you don't vote. I hate.
I'm not gonna
Probably.
vote. I'm not going to vote into a system I don't believe in and I don't support.
Vote for
Because
But
every time we keep voting and every time we keep electing people through this democracy, it just further deepens the system and integrates it into our lives. Like, I'm not going to stand up for a system that I don't believe in. The Electoral College is trash. The whole democracy that we have for voting for president, trash. On a local level, maybe it works. Politically, on a national level, completely broken.
So
I mean, go ahead, Eric.
no, I'm just gonna attack him. Go ahead.
No,
I was gonna
attack me.
say-
Come on. I want some blood, baby. Bite me.
Okay, fine. I'll bite. So
Yeah.
Let's go.
you live in a democratic country, right? You have all your freedoms and all that, and you're just like, you know what? Fuck all that. Fuck everything that people have fought for. I don't want to take the one time I have the liberty to like actually like vote for someone who stands for something I believe in. You're like, no, I don't want to. It won't even change. It doesn't matter.
Pretty much.
Because it doesn't matter what I believe in. Because it only matters what the lobbyists are paying people to believe in. What they're paying the politicians to vote for. It doesn't matter.
You
Okay, Luke.
if Trump, like, I don't understand. Do you think that Trump and Biden are going to have the exact same 4 years as president? Like, that's what you're telling me.
Not the exact same 4 years, but I don't think there's going to be drastic discrepancies that people are going to expect from switching presidency to presidency.
Luke, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain about whatever happens
You're
afterwards.
banned.
I don't complain.
You're banned. If you don't vote.
Cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me from the podcast.
Somebody put a big red X on him.
It's like America's Got Talent. Simon Cowell hits the buzzer. Get the fuck off the stage. It's just like, but that's the beauty of this country, man. I don't have to vote if I don't want to.
All right, I'm gonna move on.
Do you not believe that this?
Eric, no one, the people who are watching this at home cannot see that, but Eric just gave Luke the finger.
Boy, I don't even want to see it.
Listen, we don't know if there's any deaf people listening to this. I got to give audio descriptions.
Oh shit! We need to get a sign language interpreter.
How would that work?
That's one. I mean,
Spotify.
Hi.
all right, moving on.
Also, bye.
Okay, so my next question was, do you feel that the Democratic Party speaks for Black Americans? First one said, yes, I do. Second one said, no, not all the time, because you can't speak for Black Americans unless you are Black. They advocate for us more than Republicans want to. The third says no. However, it makes it feel like the left is the only place we have. In terms of Joe Biden, we've seen the Black vote trivialized. They think it's a shoo-in.
I agree with a mixture of 2 and 3.
Mhm.
Same.
I think 3 I think they definitely take the black vote for granted. And I definitely think from 2, I think it was 2 that said that the Liberal Party, was it 2 that said that it's framed like as the only place for blacks?
No, that was the third.
What was number 2 again? Can you just say it one more
It
time?
was no, not all the time, because you can't speak for Black Americans unless you.
Oh yeah, that's the part I agree with. Is you can't have a party that speaks for the majority of Black Americans. It's just not, unless it's constituted of blacks that are speaking as representatives of their entire race throughout the entire United States, then maybe. But to say that the liberals speak for blacks or just even minorities in general, nah, I don't believe that.
I would say the point of a party is to speak for everybody from Black, Hispanic, Asian, and white. They should speak for every single party and make everyone's lives better as
You
a
know what
party.
You know what I think, kind of going off that, is I think that if we changed requirements for the parties and made it reflect more of the demographics of the United States, that would change some of the ideals that a lot of these parties hold true and near and dear to their hearts, if they have them.
Politicians don't have hearts.
Next question was, well, it's a choose one. So police need A, less funding, B, better training. One said B, better training. I disagree that we should defund the police. We need the police. When I hear defund the police, I'm not okay with that. That's not the problem. We need the right people for the job on the streets. We need smart individuals who know how to de-escalate situations instead of taking someone's life. 2 says A, less funding, to the point where they don't have as much power. They cited the number of profit and government funding in police departments. They want money to be used more for preventative measures like education. And they cited that police comes after the fact, which is not really useful. Third says, I want to say both, but if I had to pick one, B. Education is so important. A lot of these issues go back to socioeconomic status. Pour money into the proper resources, and policing. Sorry, I read that wrong. Pour money into the proper resources. Policing doesn't kill crime. Money put in the right programs kills it at the root. Thoughts on that?
I know Eric's a big champion.
I think that a big champion. What do you mean?
Champion for education.
Oh, I think it should be more than education. I feel like, I don't know. Pretty much anything that I wanted to do, like in my community when I was growing up, like there was like somewhere I could go. And I doubt I've never lived in a low income neighborhood. I highly doubt that's true. And I think that's absurd. And I think that if you don't have like these things you can do like outside of school, like what else are you gonna do? Like you see everyone else, like if you see everyone doing something, you're just gonna do it. That's the way humans work.
Dude, what if we took like all the people from low income like areas and swapped them with high income people for like a month, doing their jobs, living their lives like in the same situations, paying the same bills they have to pay. Imagine that. Because it's like one of those things that you can't connect with unless you've had an experience with. I think.
Pretty sexy reality show idea.
Dude, that would be wild. Yo, TLC, hit me up, bro. I'll be the screenwriter real quick.
Once he's done with his season of The Bachelorette or Bachelor.
Yeah, Bachelor.
I'm gonna move on. Unless does anyone else have something to add on? No.
I'd say they summed it up pretty well. So
yeah.
Okay. So, next is an agree disagree, and I asked this question to you guys first. Do you agree with this quote? Yes or no? Any leadership that teaches you to depend on another race is a leadership that will enslave you.
Say that one more time.
yeah,
Any leadership that teaches you to depend on another race is a leadership that will enslave you.
I agree, but I don't think I would draw the line at race. I think that it's more like class than race.
I
Um,
would disagree.
I mean, if you look at it, that with the upper class is mostly white. I guess you could say that.
Yeah, but okay, we're not going to get into capitalism today. We don't have enough time for that. Go ahead, Sean.
I would just disagree, like that like I think I'm just understanding it wrong, but I would say that we should all depend on one another interchangeably.
Do you think that's what happens in this country today?
I don't think that's what happens. I think that's what should happen.
Okay. So technically, okay, yeah, all right. Luke,
I don't think I understood the question fully,
Luke.
but
I mean, the way it's said, I think that leadership, yeah, that leadership would enslave you. But I don't think there's many leaderships that don't preach some type of interdependence of the people that are below them.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many leadership people that say, yeah, like be independent. Why? Because then that puts their power at risk.
Yeah. Okay.
What about you?
Um. Listen. Oh well. Hold on. Before I even go into what I say, let me say what they said. The one said I disagree with that. I feel like we should hold ourselves accountable. We shouldn't depend on anybody. We should all hold ourselves accountable. If we, the people, solve the problems inside of us, um, then they said if you can't fix what's going on inside yourself, the world, the community will not be fixed. And I think that's a fact.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Another one says, I don't think it'll always lead to slavery, but that's how this country began. We depend on the systems that weren't made for us. So yes, we do depend on white people for a lot of things. And I think that I probably agree with that one. The systems weren't made for black people. But I do agree with number one is if you can't fix the problems that's going on inside yourself, you're not going to change a whole culture of the country.
I feel like that. I think number one is tying into like this cyclicalness to the poverty, like, right? So like if you can't fix the issues within your own community, no one's going to be able to break the cycle of poverty, right? And even if you're not even talking about community, just think about your own family, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna try to. We probably have like 10 more minutes, and I'm just gonna go through this rest of the stuff. So,
Yep.
And then there's another agree disagree. The worst enemy that the Negro have is this white man that runs around here drooling at the mouth, professing to love Negroes and calling himself a liberal. And it is following these white liberals that has perpetuated problems that Negroes have. If the Negro wasn't taken, tricked, or deceived by the white liberal, then Negroes would get together and solve our own problems. I only cite these things to show you that in America, the history of the white liberal has been nothing but a series of trickery designed to make Negroes think that the white liberal was going to solve our problems. Our problems will never be solved by the white man. Agree or disagree?
It's a steep ass quote. That is heavy.
Malcolm X.
Yeah, I knew it was Malcolm X. I think I agree to an extent. Like, the fact is, before like black people, when like Jim Crow era or whatever, like you could get it all of them together, whatever, do whatever, and nothing like doesn't they're literally not even considered like human until whatever year that was given to them by the white liberal. And I think that to an extent, like yeah, like and now at this point, I think it's different. When was this quote? This is probably from a long time ago, right?
1960s.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was gonna say during the civil rights.
He died a couple days after saying this.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Conspiracy?
I mean, I don't really want to talk about conspiracies, but I mean, I can understand that Malcolm X was a very polarizing figure. He was what I will say was I think that he portrayed Black Americans in a light that showed them as being independent, which I think that is a good inherent idea that all Blacks should have. But I think because I mean, this wasn't towards his death, but when he was anti-white in the beginning of his activism, but once he became Muslim, and he started praying alongside like Muslims of all different colors, then it was only then he was just like all Muslims were like okay in the book along
I
with.
think it's also important to see like those were way different times,
Yeah, of course.
a long time ago.
I still think that this quote, if said today, could still hold true in many ways, but that's up for interpretation. Let's go into what the people actually thought, though. So they said, I think I agree with that because the quote unquote white man will never understand what the black community goes through. I love that white people empathize with us. I really do. But at the end of the day, you don't really know what it feels like to live in black America. We're living in two different Americas, black and white. And then they told me a story about how their parents taught him how to act if a police officer pulls them over. Whereas I mentioned earlier, is that something that we weren't really taught. The second thinks that it's true to an extent. They said that white people were never going to save us in the first place, and that's true, and that was never the plan. This country wasn't made for us to succeed, grow, and flourish. They cited redlining, which still exists today in some ways. We could never have been saved by white people who built this country because it wasn't made for us. And the third mentioned he did not agree with the quote. He thinks that he was saying that all races should work together to create a sustainable society for all races. Yeah.
I like the third one. I think that everybody should work together. I don't know why it has to be one versus the other versus the other versus the other. It should just be everyone says, sorry, whatever happened, let's just do this together and make it so it works for everybody.
I think this country wasn't really like, because race and class are so like closely tied in our country, at least in today's circumstances. I think that like to say that the blacks like this country isn't set up for their race is true, but I think it's also more so of the entire like below poverty line socioeconomic class rather than just race. I think there's like, if you're poor in America, regardless of your race, it's very difficult to get out. It may be easier for some races as compared to others, but still just being poor in America makes it hard for you to get out. And the one thing that I find interesting, and this is I guess like kind of like anecdotal evidence, but or an anecdotal example, I should say, not really evidence, it's an example. But there's this one motivational speaker that I listen to, and his name's Eric Thomas, and he's a black man, grew up in Detroit, never graduated high school, never graduated college, and he like was homeless for years. He lived on the streets, and he somehow found the drive. And I don't know if from like, I mean, obviously motivational speakers speak in like very like hyperbolic senses, right? Like they're trying to like invoke some type of emotion in you, right? So they're not just going to talk to you like a plain normal being. But like, I don't know, it's weird because I mean, I would ask a couple people to like go and like research and listen to him and get back to me, but it almost sounds like he takes a stance that there's a lot of people that want to get out, but they're not determined to get out either. And to say that you have to get out of a situation in America is something that maybe not should exist in general, but it seems like he kind of takes that stance more than even though the system's against us, like people don't have the motivation to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage people to listen to him and see what their take on it is. I listen to him all the time when I'm working out and stuff. Oh, he gets me going, bro. He gets the blood pumping. I'm like, yeah, baby. Yeah. Screaming in my garage. Neighbors looking at me all weird. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's another interesting view.
So I'm gonna move on to the next thing. I'm gonna play a clip from a video. I sent this to you guys, but I don't know if you guys actually watched it. But either way, here it is.
In this crooked game of power politics here in America, the Negro, namely the race problem, integration, civil rights issue, are all nothing but tools used by the whites who call themselves liberals against another group of whites who call themselves conservatives, either to get into power or to retain power. Among whites here in America, the political teams are no longer divided into Democrats and Republicans. The whites who are now struggling for control of the American political throne are divided into liberal and conservative camps. The white liberals from both parties cross party lines to work together toward the same goal. And white conservatives from both parties do likewise. The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leaders who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress. In the New York Tribune, in an editorial dated February the 5th, 1960, they pointed out that out of 11 million qualified Negro voters, only 2,700,000 actually take time to vote. This means that, roughly speaking, only 3 million out of the 11 million Negroes who are qualified to vote take an active part. And the remaining 8 million remain voluntarily inactive. And yet it is this small minority, the 3 million Negro voters, who help determine who will be the next president. If who will be the next president can be influenced by 3 million Negro voters, it is easy to see why the presidential candidates of both political parties put on such a false show with the Civil Rights Bill and promises of integration. They must impress the 3 million voting Negroes who are the actual integration seekers. And if so much fuss is made over these 3 million integration seekers, what would the presidential candidates have to do to appease the 8 million non-voting Negroes if they ever decided to become politically active?
I'm gonna stop it there. How would that make everyone feel?
He almost makes him look like paints himself as like a black conservative the way he talks about liberals. Obviously, he's not. It also sounds like he doesn't like the conservatives either, but he really bashes the liberals, man. Really lays it into them.
Eric?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what he's saying. Like, I think that a lot of the times liberals don't really give a fuck about what they're fighting for. But at the end of the day, they're still fighting for things that I think are good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's what I would say.
John?
I would say that he makes some very good points, but I don't know if I'd say it's completely changed from Malcolm X's time to now, but I would say it's definitely not. I would say that Black people and other minorities have more of a say nowadays than they used to.
I mean, you look at it, like when he put up the numbers of how many Black Americans vote. It was that wasn't really a high percentage that he gave. Now, as we saw the other day when we were talking about it, it is above. What I think it was like
50. It's
59.
like 56 to 60 something percent.
Okay, so yeah. So with the what our interviewees said was one said, I understand the Negroes rely on the white liberal, in this case, Joe Biden, to improve our lives. But the reality is he's probably using us. Does he truly care about the black community? Does he truly believe what he says? We don't know that. Another said, I agreed with most of what he was saying. We do live in different times now, so some things are a bit different. I agree with that slightly when he said white liberals don't help us. Sometimes they do. Like, I was sad that Bernie Sanders wasn't a presidential candidate for this election. He was one who genuinely cared, I thought. But in general, white politicians use black people for votes. I feel like if they really cared, there wouldn't be as much voter suppression as there is today. Black people have been tokenized and used as a speaking point rather as a human being. And then they brought up the Black Panthers and how they were created um, to be a catalyst for positive change in the black community, but instead were forced to dissolve. Sorry,
Rest in peace, Chadwick Baldwin.
rest in peace.
Bozeman.
Okay. So now I'm just gonna we're already deep into this, so I'm just gonna mention a couple areas that they want us to speak about and ponder and just going forward in this podcast. So, in terms of Black America, they feel education reform is a major thing. A barrier to entry in politics, meaning you cannot hold a significant political office or run for president even if you do not have the funds to run a campaign. Financial literacy was a big talking point, and access to healthcare. So those were four things that they highlighted, and many of them repeated. It's like I didn't tell them what the others said. It's just they
Just
graduated to the same things.
just to clarify, that doesn't mean they're not they're just saying to keep those in mind. That not that they're in support of like barriers to. They're not saying they support that.
They want us to. They want people and us to understand that there is a barrier to entry in politics.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So that it's knocking those barriers down.
I mean that barrier is responsible for the entire reason why we only can vote between Republicans and Democrats. It's literally the entire reason why.
So, and then one of our interviewees actually wanted us to leave it at a couple questions that they were asking, and just we could think of these in our own time.
Okay.
So they asked, do we need to change people's minds? What is the reason behind looting? Who do we blame? And whose responsibility is it? Whose responsibility is it? The student to want to learn, or the teacher to teach and facilitate learning? So you think about those, and I mean, honestly, this was, being how long this was, we could probably do a whole nother episode on this, but
Yeah.
we'll see where we're at. We will obviously revisit this topic as stories continue. I mean, hopefully they don't,
Yeah.
but it will be a major talking point for this election in terms of the campaign of both candidates. It seems Trump is more law and order, and Biden is more reforming the police. I mean, has he even said that? I don't know.
Yeah.
He said that. All right.
Uh,
So I'm gonna leave it at that. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts, points?
If anyone made it this far, I love you.
What?
If
Oh yeah.
anyone's watching this, I love you.
We
Oh,
appreciate.
nice job. You really stuck with us the whole way.
We always appreciate the support. We hope that this could grow into something where we could have these conversations and give these regular people just like us a platform to speak where they are not brought on solely to fit an agenda. Whereas, like, you see like a black person coming on Fox News that's like a diehard conservative, so then obviously he's like agreeing with everything that like Fox News would say, or then CNN the opposite, So we hope that we could grow into that. And thanks for being on the journey, everybody.
Until next time.
Until next time, give everyone a nice wave.
Bye.
Adios, amigo.
You boys.
Peace.
Peace.